Love is our true divine nature, and our heart serves as the intersection of the spiritual and physical, connecting our soul with our body as the conduit for anchoring our divinity onto the earth plane. Embodying our divinity is the key to our ascension and to manifesting our highest destiny in this life. The teachings of the heart are alchemy. Join spiritual mentor and channel Jennifer Spohr each week on a sacred journey to lift the veil to remembering your divinity and meet other beautiful souls who are living the path of the awakened heart. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. And today it is my pleasure to welcome as a guest Gurds Hundal. She is a trauma coach and inner work expert for high achieving sensitive women. And her mission is to empower them to transform trauma and trust themselves so they can powerfully move forward in their life. Gurds, I'm so happy to have the opportunity to connect with you again, and welcome.
Oh, bless you. Thank you for having me. I know we had such a beautiful conversation on my podcast, which was the Inner Light Project. And I'm just so grateful that we get to connect again and share more medicine in the world.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited to have this conversation, and you work with trauma with a lot of your clients, and we were just briefly touching on this before we hit record, and is that, trauma can really show up in a lot of ways. I'd love, well, actually first, I'd love for you to share with us before we get into that. What inspired you to this work, right? Because there's like so many topics around like the inner work and the ascension journey that you could have chosen, but you chose this area to work in.
Gosh, so we'll have to go back to 2012. Not happy in my career. On the outside, everything looked amazing. I was like the perfect person on paper, but inside I was a hot mess. I was all over the place. I was chaotic. I was just sad. I didn't really know myself. I thought I knew myself, but I really didn't. And so imagine me going to a hospital. They've said to me, you potentially have cancer. I'm scared to get my results. I'm sat there waiting for my results. There's nobody in the hallway, and I'm, you know how we are when we're feeling sorry for ourselves. I was like, what have I done to deserve this in my head? And I hear, you created this. And I look around the room and there's no one there. And I'm like, oh my God, I hope I'm not going crazy. And I go into the room, have a chat with the consultant, and they said, oh, we misdiagnosed you. And I run out of the hospital and I cry and I hear the words, it's time to heal. And I remember calling my friend up. We were both crying about it. And I went home and I basically wrote, Jennifer, 30 pages in 7 hours of my life. I saw my patterns from my childhood, everything that had happened to me. And I remember just looking in the mirror and saying to myself, it's time to heal. I love myself. And I bawled my eyes out like I've never bawled my eyes out before. And it was the first time I actually met myself. It was the first time I allowed myself to cry and grieve who I thought I was meant to be. And it just took me on this crazy journey where I ended up having a podcast, or actually a radio show first with a friend of mine. We talked about spirituality. We did like Reiki on the show. We interviewed lots of people from different backgrounds. And I really just wanted to help people to learn how to heal. At that time, I didn't know I was going to do trauma work. I was just like, I need to share stories because I actually was a journalist before and I walked away from a career in journalism in 2012. And that was my turning point in the hospital. Like, I can't go back to this old life. There is something beyond this. That life does not exist anymore. And I ended up working with young people. I ended up training people up and down the country. And as I was working with young people, I thought I was there to help them, but they were actually helping me to heal because it was bringing me back to my inner child. I was teaching them how to make documentaries and perform, and it was just the most powerful experience I had. Then I did lots of different things, and I kept asking the question, what am I meant to do in this world? What is it? And I remember one day walking past, and it was, I can't even remember where it was, but there was a leaflet and it said life coach. And I went, huh, I don't know if I could do that. And I picked up the leaflet, took it home, and I just left it there. And then I went back a few weeks later and I opened up this little box. I had a lot of different things that I would do, and I'd put them all in this beautiful little box. And I opened it up and I looked and I was like, I've been doing this my whole life. I've been helping people since the age of 8. I worked in a pharmacy when I was studying at university. My friends always come to me with their problems. I was a friend that listened to everybody's issues at 3 a.m. in the morning. You called me, I was there. but I didn't know how to put myself first. It was always about everybody else. I was in service from such a young age. Even in the journalism world, like Jennifer, people would come to me with their problems whilst I'm working. If I was sat having my lunch, everybody had an issue and come to me. And so I realized that actually, let me trust this process. There's a reason why this is coming up. And I remember in the library as well, Jennifer, a book fell out and it was talking about coaching and therapy. And I thought, oh, how interesting. And I didn't even touch the book, it just fell out of nowhere. And so again, I kept seeing the signs. But actually, I started off, Jennifer, as a purpose coach because, like, I'm trying to find my purpose. And then I discovered my purpose and I was like, everyone needs to know there's purpose. So I ended up becoming a purpose coach. But then I realized that isn't what I'm meant to do. And it was only till I did the more deepest, darkest work of my own soul and work, going through the dark night of the soul. So I'd started in 2012 and I was still doing the work of loving myself, boundaries, just letting go of a lot of past stuff. But my deepest work began probably, I would say, 2014 and then 2015 when I was diagnosed with kidney disease, well, kidney problem. I was born with a defect. And so as I was mourning the loss of my old life, I had to slow down. And so much trauma came up, Jennifer. So much past pain, ancestral, cultural, society, familial, the mother wound, the father wound, the sibling wound, you name it. All of it was coming up. I had to deal with grief because for certain family members passed away. Everything was just coming up, and I was learning how to process it all. And then it was like, I'm ready to actually help people. I was already doing the life coaching already, but I knew my work was bigger than this. And that's when I designed the programs that I have now. And what I now teach is what I've learned in the space of 7 years. I teach in 4 months. And it's been the biggest work I've ever done of my life. I'm continue to learning. Continue to grow. I'm always learning. And that's how I became a trauma coach, because I was looking at my own stuff and I realized the more that I looked at it, the more I can then help others to understand themselves just the way I've understood myself.
Wow, there's so much, so many gems in what you shared, and I literally got the chills when you were talking about that at that time in your life when you were misdiagnosed, and then the awakening essentially that occurred from that. And I can't even imagine getting news like that, and then just them being like, "Oh, sorry, we were wrong."
No, it was, and especially when you're 20, well, I was
Yeah,
actually, no, I was 25. I was 25 at the time. I was just turning 25. And, you think your life is about, it's made at 25. You're meant to have the most amazing time, settle down, everything. And here I'm, cancer scare. What? Like,
yeah.
scared the
And
shit
that's
out of me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's so, I mean, it is like you said, you're only 24. It's so young. So young. And wow, I mean, also just in sharing your journey, with my journey as well, there's just so much symmetry in terms of the timelines and everything. It's so interesting because I've connected with many people who were having profound experiences like that around that 2012.
Yes, I have as well. Like, there's a few people I've interviewed, and they're all saying happened around 2012, 2013. So there
Yeah.
must have been a big energy shift happening at that point, because I felt it. And the fact that you felt it, that just shows that we were, I don't know if it was like women were coming back into their power or women were coming back into the feminine. There was something happening where the world was shifting and the energy of the world was shifting, and we had to change with it no matter what.
Yeah, yeah, I've read a little bit about it, and I'm not an expert on astrology, but yes, there was something going on around that time, like between that 2012, 2014 time. And I mean,
Mm.
I'm sure you can probably relate to what I'm sharing as well. It's like, as profound as those initial experiences are, and I know for me, it was really barely scratching the surface of like everything that has unfolded since then, and especially what's unfolded since 2020.
No, 100%. So much has shifted since 2020. And I
Yeah.
think there's more, not that there hasn't always been trauma, but I feel like there is a deeper layer of trauma now than there's ever been in the world before. There's more isolation now. People are just not knowing how to process how the world is shifting dramatically, social media, everything. There's just so much happening and there's so much noise. And people are realizing, okay, I need to do the work. Whereas before, I think people weren't, they were like, I will heal whenever. But then COVID came and people were just like, I cannot run away. Normally people would go to the pub or go out clubbing or something to escape their pain. But I felt like COVID was the first time where people were like, okay, I need to face this now.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree that it brought an awakening to so many people. Um, and on the topic of trauma, I was alluding to this earlier, but there are lots of ways that trauma can show up, and we tend to, at a high level, think of trauma as in, like if you're in a car accident or if you experience some type of abuse, and there are and those are significant for sure, and definitely necessary to look at in terms of our healing journey. But there are lots of other ways that trauma shows up as well. I'd love for you to share with us, like, what are some of those ways that people wouldn't think, right? That they've unknowingly maybe experienced trauma, or they're unknowingly holding on to it.
Well, I just want to say that okay, we might look at somebody's lifestyle and say, oh, well, they could have never experienced trauma because they
Mhm.
were well off or something like that, right? Or they didn't go through what I went through. But actually, everybody has trauma. No matter how big or small it is, we all carry trauma. Even if on the outside we have the most amazing family, we all carry trauma. Trauma isn't just about our family trauma or our ancestral trauma or our cultural or society trauma. There's also things that happen to you in your childhood. For example, a teacher said something to you that you're not good enough, you're not worthy, or you're not smart enough, that person will then take on that story for the rest of their life in their job, trying to prove themselves above and beyond, being a people pleaser and a sacrificer. So that's one ways. Trauma can happen, like you said, from an accident or something, but trauma starts in the womb. People don't realize that. When we look at our family history, when we start to ask questions, there is something happening even then. What our parents are feeling, say, for example, they're fighting, you then might be scared of, arguments growing up. I know with me, the kidney thing actually, I can see where it comes from because my mum worked in the kidney renal unit. She was around people who had dialysis. They were at the end stage of their lives. And I had a lot of fear growing up. My mum naturally would have had the fear to make sure her patients are okay. I was obviously in the womb when she looked after them. And so I developed a fear state long before I came into this world. And
Yeah.
people don't realize that actually some of our patterns come from when we're in the womb, whatever our mother's feeling, her thoughts, how she's being treated. And, we don't know this subconsciously, right? We're just consciously living our lives, not realizing. But when we take a step back and we look at our life and we start to ask questions, then we can see where trauma comes from. Trauma can come from even, gosh, car accident, like we said, car accident. Trauma can come from somebody saying the wrong thing to you or upsetting you. Trauma, trauma is whatever it feels to you. And if there's a resistance. So somebody, it might be that you played a match, a tennis match, and you didn't win. You think you're not worthy enough. There's so many different layers to trauma. I'm trying to think right now, but there's so many different areas like we can talk about. But
Yeah, no, I
again,
mean, I'm just as you're, it's what you're sharing is super enlightening, because I'm having memories as you're talking about this, right? Like, for example, what you were talking about, you brought up teachers, right? And how something can seem like if it's insignificant, but it's not. Like, I remember when I was in the ninth grade, in an algebra class, and math was not, like, I'm a genius when it comes to like basic accounting and math, but getting into the other stuff was never my strong suit as a child. That just wasn't
mm.
my thing. And I remember I had this algebra teacher and I got a perfect score on my paper. And he literally in front of the class said, "You got a perfect score," something like that, "and you better frame this because I'm sure it'll be the only one you ever get."
No, oh, that's so
Yes. And
cruel.
so obviously, right? I mean, that was when I was like
What a dick.
Or
I just want to say that.
14 years old, and I'm 50 now, and I still remember that, right? That's like a perfect
Wow.
example of, what you talk about. Now, that's a memory that, I mean, because 'cause I've spent, like you, right, spent lots of years
Yeah.
doing doing the inner work, and so that's a memory that came up for me, like, years ago. But it's a great example of
Wow.
what you're talking about, where because we also live in a society and culture where we are taught to muscle through everything, right? And that if we have
Yes.
a problem with something, that it's viewed as a weakness. So there's just so much programming, right? Societal, ancestral, cultural programming that's embedded in us, right? That causes us to repress and hold on to so many of these energies in our body. The other thing you were talking about being in the womb and taking on what your mother was experiencing in relation to her field of work is, I thought, was really key as well, because you're also, I think you're also you're an empath, right?
Yep, I
And
am. Yeah.
yeah, there a lot of the people that listen to this podcast, and I myself am an empath as well. So i- you're gonna, like, the average person's gonna take on someone's stuff in the womb anyways. But if you're also an empath, you're exceptionally sensitive, and empaths, unless they become conscious to it, right, can also tend to literally absorb other people's feelings.
Oh my God, yes. And I come from a lineage of empaths. My mum's even more of an empath than I am. Her sensitivity is to another level, but she's never really understood it. My mum's whole the mother side, all empaths. And it's only when I understood the word empaths years ago that I've realized why they were affected by energy or what people said, how they felt, their emotions, how they would go up and down. And I then realized what it was like for me. So I would take on my friends' problems. Those problems would then become my own. I would not be able to sleep. I would feel it as if it was my problem. And I spent my whole life doing that, and I was up and down like a yo-yo. I felt depressed. I didn't know what was going on, but it was not depression. It was just I didn't learn how to release it and transmute it. And it was only, I would say, gosh, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago that I realized I was an empath, and I literally cried. Or maybe it was longer, but I cried my eyes out because it's like the first time I feel understood. I'm not crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. I just need to learn how to discern other people's emotions, so I'm not taking it on board. Because Jennifer, before I got sick in 2015, I was speaking on stages to thousands of people. I was traveling up and down the country, and I would collapse after for days. I didn't understand why. I was like, "Oh, I'm probably burnout."
Yeah,
It was not. It was people's emotions, people's energies, because when you're an empath, you have a bright light. And everybody wants that energy, and everybody wants the, "Oh, there's something about her. I want that. Oh, she's so caring and she's kind." But we're not understanding that we do not have to give our energy to everybody. We have to preserve our energy and give to the right people, because there's some people that will take. There's not everybody is how we are. We're wired to be like caring and be in service to others. But there's people who are takers, and we need to discern between who are people that are going to help us as well and who people are just takers. And I spent my whole life with so many takers, friendship circles that just took, and when it was my time to have support, boom, they were gone. And it can be very hard for empaths to understand that because they think they're the problem, but what not they're realizing it's the energy that they have, and it's so powerful, but it's so potent that it needs to be protected.
absolutely. I mean, being discerning in the energy that we're choosing to give, and also being discerning in the energy that we're choosing to absorb. One misconception I've found in my experience on my own journey and with clients over the years is that many empaths think that because they're an empath, they're automatically going to absorb everyone's feelings and energies, and that's not true. You can actually hone your empathic ability to sense others' feelings and energy without allowing yourself to absorb it.
Oh, 100%. And I think when you're sick as well, you do absorb it even more. But when you
Oh,
get
totally. Yeah.
stronger, yeah, when you get stronger, because that's when I started to understand it. When I was sick, I was like, why am I absorbing everybody's? Like before, it wasn't as bad. But as I got stronger, I realized, that's not my stuff. I don't, like you said, I don't need to absorb it. And that's what I do now. I don't absorb it. I'm just like, I transmute it, I let it go. And that's the key. Like you have a gift, empaths out there. It's just knowing how to deal with it, but also honoring your time and your boundaries. And that, like, Jennifer said, you do not have to take it on board. It's not yours to take on.
Absolutely. I'd love for you to share with us more about how you work with your clients to heal that trauma.
Gosh, so as I was mentioning, it's 4 months of deep work, but it's
Mhm.
really 7 years of my deepest, darkest time, and I really get to the root. So I don't believe in just brushing things over because, everything's happening for a reason. And I look firstly about like understanding themselves. So we get them questioning themselves, like, what was it like growing up? What was mom and dad like? What, patterns and behaviors. And then we do, which I have is a VIP day, which it's called the Rise Up Sister. And we literally do the deepest work. So we heal the ancestral, the cultural, the society, familial in 5 hours. It's so powerful. We have breaks, by the way. Um, but it's the most powerful transition they have, because if we don't heal the past wounds, we can never love ourselves deeply. We can have parts of pockets of love, but we really need to do the deepest work in order to love ourselves. Once we've done that, then we're able to love ourselves. And that's what I teach. And we look at again where you didn't know how, you grew up where you didn't know where to love yourself. We recreate a new bond. We then are able to put boundaries and protection, because again, you can't do that until the past is cleared, because you'll be dipping in and out of it. And then we meet your inner child. And I love it when they get to this point, because this is the first time they're hearing their inner child, because a lot of us don't know how to calm down the chaos in the mind. But we have to go through this process first to get to her. And when they get to her, my God, they have amazing epiphanies that happen. And then it's all about balancing energies. Then we look at numerology and other things as well. But that's all happening in 4 months. They have access to me on Voxer, so they can talk to me whenever they want. Um, it's just a profound, like, I've had profound experiences with clients where they came out of toxic relationships, they're now married. I've had clients who've been through narcissistic abuse and they're now thriving. They've met beautiful partnerships. There's just so many different things. I've had people who've learned to love themselves again, holding boundaries, speaking their truth. People have gone back to college, really doing what they're passionate about. I've had people who've been really sick and they've overcome so much, and now they're just in their energy and in their power. It's just such a beautiful process, and it's them doing the work. I'm not doing the work for them. I'm just a guide. But it just makes me so proud to be able to help people come out of that darkness, because I know what it's like, Jennifer, and I did it alone. And I do not recommend that to anyone
Yeah.
ever. Like, I would never do it again by myself. If I've anything I need to go through, I'll get support, because everything is community. We're not meant to, heal alone. We're meant to be
Yeah.
supported and guided. We all come from community, but because of the world we live in now, it's all me, me, me. But actually, no, we need somebody to, whether they say something or not, but just be a sounding board for us to really heal and help us to understand what's holding us back from really being happier, healthy, and joyful.
Yeah, I've been there too. Definitely not a place that you want to be. And when you talk about that me, right? It's because we've been living in a world where we've been told me. We've been living in a world that promotes uh conformity, right? And making decisions based upon external validation and circumstances versus actually tuning into ourselves at a soul level. It's not about, living from the human mind or living from the soul. I believe our ascension journey is about that dance of living as an aware soul and in a fully enriching human experience.
Oh, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. And that's why we have to peel off the layers to come back home to who we really are. We
Yeah.
all are very intuitive. We've just had
Yeah.
layers and conditions, especially as women. You have to look at the history of women to realize how far women have come till this day. Women didn't even have access to their bank accounts at one point. They didn't even have a bank account. They couldn't even. Wonder women struggle to trust themselves. And so I see some men, and oh, it's so interesting, Jennifer. Like, to be like, oh, she can't make a decision. I'm like, no shit, Sherlock, because her whole lineage couldn't make a decision. She's the first that's trying to make a decision, and then you're putting her down for trying to make a decision or figuring it out. We're in a time now where we're finally able to look at the cultural patterns, look at the societal patterns, look at the ancestral, and all of the patterns, familial patterns, and realize, why is it that we can't trust ourselves? It's because our lineage wasn't able to. So we have to heal ourselves in order to heal that lineage. And when we heal that, then we're able to trust ourselves. Then we're able to anchor in ourselves. Then we're able to, hold boundaries with people. But that's the reason why there's so many successful women out there. They can end up in toxic relationships because it's ancestral, it's patterns. But also it can be to do with what they grew up with, or society has made them think. So we really have to come back, and we need to sit still to really understand why we are the way we are. Because when we know why we are the way we are, then we can take our power back.
Absolutely. Earlier, you mentioned about the difficulty of the chaos of the mind, which is a really common challenge that people experience on their growth journey. What would be your advice for the most direct way for someone, or like a practice that someone could use to quiet their mind and start to, better discern, or continue to better discern the difference between that voice and the inner one?
So I'm going to be honest with you, it's not going to happen overnight. It's a
Mm-hmm.
process.
Yeah.
Most of us have spent our whole lives in chaos. And I'm just going to share a little bit of my story and then I'll share. Right. I didn't actually know I grew up in chaos. It's only till I started unraveling things. And I grew up basically, I moved 3 times. So I was born in a place called Leeds. We moved to Scotland, then we moved back again. And I went to 3 different schools in a short space of time. We lived in 3 different places. I didn't realize that that created the chaos of the rest of my life because, 0 to 13 is your early time to learn the patterns of your life. I have grown up my whole life in chaos, and there's other things that have happened as well, family members not being well, but my patterning has been chaos. Even when I was in the journalism world, I loved chaos. When I look back, I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. And I'm like, oh, why would I want to be in survival mode all the time? But that's all I knew. So that became my pattern. Everything I did was chaos, chaos, chaos. It was only till I had my operation where I had to slow down and had to grieve a part of me to realize that chaos is not normal. Peace is normal. But a lot of us are scared to meet peace. This is the thing. So we just stick with chaos because that's what we've always known. So number one, I would say is sit back, look at when did chaos start in happening in your life. You need to start to ask the questions first, like who was the parent that was chaotic growing up? What was your environment like? Why do I feel chaotic? What does peace feel like? And I would say start meditation, but meditation is not easy. Like, I will be honest with you, the first time I started meditating, I could not switch off because my mind was all over the place. So I would say journal first, like as I was saying, write your thoughts down. Because when you write your thoughts down, the problem is half solved, but also your mind starts to calm down because it's emptying. So one thing I do every day is I journal in the morning how I'm feeling, and I just let the pen onto paper and see what happens. And then in the evening, I let everything go out of my head, whether it's a bullet point or a paragraph. And then I will always write what I'm grateful for, because then you will be able to go to sleep better. Also, you'll calm the mind. But again, you might find yourself feeling like, oh, something's not right with me because you're used to the chaos. And it's observing that why are you putting yourself into the chaotic moment? So
Yeah.
yes, try meditation, even if it's for five.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Oh, no, I'm saying
Yeah,
I
even
was
if it's
just
for
about
five
to
minutes.
yeah, I was just about to say, I love what you said about it not being, an overnight process, because it's not. And with, what you're saying with meditation, it's not either. Meditation, something actually that I highly recommend um to people to get more tuned into their inner voice. But it is also a lot like working a muscle, and it's so important to have the willingness to let ourselves be human, right? But at the same time, to keep showing up to it.
100%. And the next thing I would say, okay, meditation, but after that, you can start to do like yoga or something that will slow your mind down, because the mind is just full of baggage. You're
Yeah.
writing your journal, you're starting to meditate, move your body, move it. You'll start to release things that are stuck in the body, because trauma isn't just the mind, trauma is physical trauma as well. We hold so much in our nervous system. That is why you're feeling in chaos. And again, that's observing. So when you exercise, just observing where the chaos feels in your body, scanning the body to understand where does it feel heavy. That will start to be your guiding point. And it's about calming your nervous system down, because your whole life you've been in survival, chaotic mode. You don't know anything better. But when you start to observe it, it's like, oh, that's not normal. But then the last thing I would say is get yourself a coach or a therapist and start to talk about the chaos. Where did it come from? Start to understand it and do the work. And I would say, come and join me on my program, the Infinite Trust Method, because once we calm the mind down through the program, my gosh, you start to
Mhm.
be really self-reflective, you're observant, you start to understand yourself, you see the patterns, and you will shift. You will really shift, because when we heal all those deepest patterns, we are then peeling off all the layers that has been causing the chaos. Again, it's not just family chaos, it's ancestral. There might be chaos going on from 7 generations backwards that you don't even know.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
so key. And the cultural side as well, like you don't know, like the cultural side again, there's so many layers of chaos that we grew up, if your culture was like running around doing this, doing that, you're bound to that, your nervous system thinks that's normal.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And Gurds, just in closing, what else are you feeling guided to bring forward in this now moment?
I think it's just, you have the power to take what's it again? You have the power to take your life back. You have the power to change your life.
Mhm.
When you heal your trauma, you heal your life. When you heal your trauma, you heal your inner child. The reason why you're feeling the way you are right now is because your inner child has not been met. She has been forgotten, or he's been forgotten, and they need to come back out. But they can't come back out because you're in chaos. So that's when you look at your patterns, and you need to observe the patterns. When you observe it, then you're able to meet your inner child again. And, the reason we feel up and down is because our inner child just wants to feel safe. She wants to be heard. She wants to be seen. She wants to be understood. And she deserves to live a happy life. You deserve to live a happy life. And if I can help you in any way, please message me. And just, yeah, I will be happy to guide you and assist you in any way.
Yeah, thank you. Pure wisdom. And speaking of messaging, if someone wants to connect more deeply with you, to learn more about your podcast, to learn more about your work and all of your amazing programs, where is the best place for them to go to do that?
So there's two ways. You can just type my name, Gurds Hundal, Gurdshundal, into Google, and it will come up with my website, the podcast, and everything. Or you can just go on my website at gurdshundal.com, where everything is there. My podcast, the Inner Light Project's there, and my programs are on there. And yeah, just send me a message, and let's see if I can help you.
Wonderful. And we will have the links that she has provided to connect with her included in the show notes as well for those who are listening. And Gurds, I mean, so much wisdom, so many gems, so much actionable wisdom and advice shared that someone can take from this conversation. Thank you for so generously sharing your heart and sharing your time. And thank you for showing up to do what you do.
Thank you. And thank you for having this podcast as well, because I know so many people will benefit from this. And, not just my episode with you, but other episodes, because that, again, stories heal, right? Hearing
Yeah,
my story might help somebody out there going, shit, you know what? I can actually change my life around. If I can do it, you can do it, and that's the key is stories are medicine. And I hope you take what you need from here today. And thank you again, Jennifer, for just holding the space.
absolutely. And thank you. Thank you for listening to Path of the Awakened Heart. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or pathoftheawakenedheart.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about living with an awakened heart and navigating your ascension journey, visit me at jenniferspore.com.